So we've been married for 10 years now, and our daughter Micah is 5 years old. And we, during the whole pregnancy, didn't know there was anything to be wary of. Doctors didn't know that there could be any complications at all.
Yeah.
It was when she was 3 days old when we were alerted to some potential issues.
We eventually brought her into the ER, and they looked at her and they hit this button on the wall that was code blue, and all of these medical professionals started rushing in and grabbed her, and they said, there's a 6-day-old baby having seizures.
Genuinely, when she was born, I think that the doctors didn't think she was going to live. And
I just remember holding her in the hospital room, just weeping over her. She was having a seizure after seizure, and I couldn't do anything.
you feel helpless.
You feel helpless just holding your baby and trying everything you can and not knowing what to do and just having to be with her through that pain, exhaustion, confusion. It was a really hard time.
Yeah, and for the doctors to sit there and tell you your daughter will probably never see or talk or walk or eat or sit up, to be sitting there and it feels like you're looking ahead at your life and you're like, this is the path I have to walk down now. I mean, it was overwhelming. And we didn't know at first if it was a genetic thing at all, but you both have a random mutation on the same recessive gene on the same DNA strand. And that's what brought us Micah. And that's kind of what led to her brain malformation. And so that really changed our plans for how we thought we were going to grow our family. Naturally was kind of the initial plan, obviously. We were told we have a 25% chance of having another Micah if we tried to have kids naturally, right? So some people asked us, well, why not just try for that?
Having a special needs kid has changed our lives in so many ways and has changed us.
She has brought so much joy. Like, she is the happiest, sweetest, most beautiful little girl that you'll ever meet.
So sweet.
She lights up every room. Like, I mean, she's changed our life forever, right? And there's nothing we would do to ever change that. But at the same time, you're never hoping to have a kid or looking to have a kid with brain malformations because of what their life looks like and the impact, all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would never naturally try if the chances are 25% chance of that happening again.
I've talked with a lot of people, and we talk about, they talk about abortion's okay if you find out that the baby probably will be special needs or there's something wrong with them. That's totally fine. Special needs kids bring so much. And again, I'm not trying to paint over the hardship of it.
No.
We're living it day to day in certain ways. To even have this idea about eradicating a type of person because you don't view them as enough, to me is a form of evil. Or because it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line on that?
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line on that? The second one, we looked into IVF. So they take his sperm, my egg, they fertilize it, then they can test those embryos and see if they have a genetic malformation. But then that would we have to look at this embryo, which is a life, and it's like Micah.
Yeah.
I can't destroy it.
We'd be presented with that question. Do you want to have another Micah or we can destroy this? We knew for sure we would never choose to destroy that life, right? So then the third option was
Foster care
and adoption. I mean, either way, right? It's going to find a child that is born and needs a home. And as we dove into that further, we learned about how many families are waiting to adopt a newborn, which was
30, 35, 36.
It was incredible
families
to find
per
that
newborn.
out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going that path was discouraging for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we just didn't feel peace about that, right? And then it was around that time when people started mentioning snowflake adoption. They're like, have you heard of snowflake adoption? I'm like, no. I don't know, what are you talking about? As we researched more and more and dove into it and realized this whole world of embryos waiting to be given a chance at life, waiting for someone to choose them and bring them into their home, and that resonated big time.
We believe that these are little lives, and that life begins at conception based on our faith. The more I researched, the more I wanted to be a part of this new frontier of saving these little lives, these lives in these, almost these frozen orphanages, just waiting for a chance.
Yeah, so we adopted 12 embryos, and out of those 12, we had twins, and so we have 9 left. Unfortunately, one didn't make the thaw. I was adopted through Bethany Christian Services. It's really interesting because I think I've been blessed with this unique perspective on what adoption is on this side of things. It's easy to look at just what adoption is from a parental standpoint or from an onlooker standpoint, but to be someone who's kind of gone through a similar process, to understand, okay, this is what was important to me, this is what was important to my sister, to my brother, to my other friend who was adopted from Korea. It was just an awesome opportunity to see kind of how it affects people differently. And then in terms of me as a parent, how I can then help the kids kind of navigate through that process.
So I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder when I was 5 years old. And one of the first things my parents were told was that I would not be able to have children on my own. Finding that out when I was that young gave me the time to think through alternatives and other ways of growing a family on my own. And then when we met, we were able to kind of come together and make that decision together.
Yeah.
I fully agree with the idea that IVF has to be taken very, very seriously. Yeah. These doctors and the people that decide to pursue it have to take it so seriously, and I think sometimes they just create these embryos without any thought of what's going to happen to the rest of them that don't get used.
There just needs to be, like you said, kind of caution and parameters to kind of safeguard these technologies. This was something that she really wanted to pursue. She wanted the opportunity to carry a child full term, and that wasn't something I had ever thought about. And so once I found out that that was something that was important to her, then I was fully on board.
I was just so grateful to be able to be a part of a solution, of a very pro-life, life-affirming solution to that issue.
Yeah, I agree. It's really interesting, again, just given what's been happening culturally, the decision out of Alabama, SBC. Is if we as Christians truly believe that life begins at conception, then these are babies, and they're afforded the same freedoms and liberties that we would afford other unborn babies.
I would really hope that as this kind of the fallout of this happens, that there is more and more embryo adoption, especially among Christians, who even might agree with the SBC about that IVF is not the path that Christians should take, but then, okay, these babies still exist, it's still happening, let's be part of the solution.
We knew from the get-go that we were going to have a hard time having kids. And we had tried for about 2.5 years before nothing was working, and we decided it was time to go the IVF route. And then we ended up having three kids from our frozen embryos, and then we had 11 extra embryos left afterwards. Our fertility doctor told us, We had 3 options. We could discard them, we could donate them to science, or we could do embryo adoption. The way we felt, we wanted to give them a chance at life, because they could be sitting there in a freezer, or you could give them the potential to have a life.
For me, it was, as a father, there's only one thing I can do for them at this point. We couldn't have kids. We would have had 11 kids. We would have been living in a cardboard box, but we would have been happy. We would love, being a parent's been the greatest gift I've ever had. We certainly didn't feel comfortable with discarding them. Coming from the path we came from, that was not really an option for us. And so every embryo mattered to me. I still feel like I'm the father of those embryos. I still feel like I'm responsible for those, that it's my job to care for those and make the best decisions I can. Like I say my kids, I feel like saying my kids, I just don't want to be, they're not my kids anymore at this point, but my feeling at that time was they're my kids, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to, if they needed me, they could find me. Because I have Kaylee, Colton, and Brooklyn, but I could have easily had, X, Y, and Z as my son or daughter, whoever's in there. And I just wanted to know, I care deeply about all of them.
Going down the road, knowing all these years later, after all the hard times that we had just to get pregnant, knowing that we had extra embryos was not something that I ever thought would ever possibly happen.
It was
hard to let go.
Emotional to let go.
Yes.
Yeah, it was hard to let go because they were yours,
It took us about 3.5 years to fill out the paperwork, because I would start it and then I was just like, I can't do this, I'm not ready for it. I'd throw it away, and I just could not get myself to go through with it until finally I ended up having to have a hysterectomy, and more time went by, and Travis was like, Tara, we can't physically have kids anymore, and they're just sitting in a freezer. We need to do something.
We had the choice of how many embryos we wanted to give out for adoption. We talked about that and decided to give them all. I want to give them every shot to have a baby. I wanted to give ours every shot to have life, and we wanted to keep them together. The way that I understand it is that they get all of the embryos, and then when they're done with their family and they've decided they're done, the way that we understood it was that they would come back to us and we could do this again.
And be paired up with another family.
If the embryos were still viable and somebody was interested, then I would want them to be a part of the selection too. So that we would all have a say in what we were looking for, because again, we're a family at this point. We are a family.
But I just remember signing all sorts of things, and I don't think they're legally ours anymore.
Which, again, like I said, a lot of trust on both sides, but I completely trust them, and I know, at this point I know them, and I do feel like they try to make decisions to honor us. I think they're very obvious that they make decisions to honor us as well.
Yeah, it was an emotional journey for me, just trying to let go and know that our story of what we had tried for so long was then finished in that chapter of our life.
When we did the embryo adoption, it was like we were helping a family become a family. Because we had jokes, because I was a Cowboys fan and he's a Bears fan, we were going to name the baby Ditka. Yeah. Because Ditka was very important to both franchises. And so I thought, the way we found out they were in labor, if I'm remembering this correct, is that we saw that on the placard that they have in hospitals for the baby's weight, the birth, who the mom is, who the dad is, and it said Ditka. Ditka, the baby Ditka or whatever, and I was like, do they have the baby? Is Ditka here?
Yeah, it's just a magical feeling, getting to know that someone who was frozen for 10 years is now here. I feel like we are the lucky ones that get to be a part of the whole thing. We would do it all over again.
We got married and started trying for a baby right away. After 3 years being unsuccessful with every medical trial under the sun, we were introduced to embryo adoption. I had not been told by anyone my whole life. I had not ever known that this was a thing, science or not science. I had no idea that people had embryos that they were knowingly putting up for adoption for couples like us to use. I think I had shut the door on carrying a baby, and when we were told, you would be candidates based on your health and based on your age and based on where you're at right now, like you would be a candidate to adopt frozen, fully fertilized embryos and transfer them into your body. I think at that moment, it was a new spark of light and a new spark of hope that we could carry a baby and bring a baby into this world.
It gave us hope.
1 in 7 women struggle, and that means 1 in 7 women have been on Google and have asked the questions.
I would say our fears were not knowing what was going to happen.
I think another fear of the adoption itself was it being somebody else's embryo, full-blooded, mom and dad. Where are they going to be? How are they going to feel? You know, are we going to match with somebody who ends up being 45 miles down the road? Are we going to have somebody showing up at our doorstep? Are they going to be at basketball games? I think that all went through our brain after 3 years of like, we want a baby so bad. We want a baby right now. We want it to be all ours. Or is it going to look like we're sharing kind of down the road? We had to sit down and we wrote a life book about ourselves, pictures of us and our support system and our family and our values. And basically our agents had shipped that off to families who were looking to place their embryos for adoption. And then we waited for a family to pick us, which was different than typical adoptions when you're kind of choosing and you're getting to see it was in somebody else's hands. When we got word that we had a match, and that was exactly what it said, we got an email from our adoption coordinator and the headline just said, we have a match. And we're looking at these people and we're thinking they are such a beautiful family and they have created these beautiful kids, and it was kind of like looking into our future. And the last document kind of shocked us because when we went into the process, we were very open about we do not wish to have a relationship with the placing family.
We were for the closed adoption.
We were too nervous, and our lady that we were working with assured us that it was very normal and that a lot of families feel the same way. It's very common. The placing families know, and she said, your placing family said they will respect whatever you decide, but they did write you a letter. And at the end of this letter, it's very long, but there was one part that stuck out to us that we, kind of talk about, and it says, we fully understand that these children will be yours and we will not be showing up at your doorstep to intrude. As this is a unique situation, we know how you might feel more reserved and worried about your privacy with your children. These embryos are very important to us, and we feel like we have worked so hard to create them through our time, love, tears, surgery, money, blood, etc. They will
forever be a part of us. It's just hard to hand them over and have the doors closed. I mean, how cool would it be to be able to grow our families together and have this really unique bond? We only want the best for the two of you. Much love, Tara and Travis.
It wasn't until the night before our transfer, we had gotten an email asking if they could pray for us over FaceTime. And when we opened our little rectangle phone, and it was the parents and all 3 kids sitting there and just looking at us saying, you're gonna get pregnant tomorrow, and we're just so happy for you. And we prayed together and we cried together, and from that moment the FaceTime turned into a group chat, and the group chat turned into family vacations. And we tell people we were probably the exception and not the rule, but we did not just adopt the embryos, we adopted their whole family and extended family. We transferred our first embryo, she was frozen in a straw of 2. The second one refroze perfectly fine, and we got pregnant on the first embryo that we transferred. I can't imagine our life without our daughter, especially, but I also can't visualize a life where we would not have had Travis and Tara and the kids and even their extended family for the last 3 years. We would be completely different people.
It's been great. It's been awesome. That was a good decision that we made.